Nova says, hey, let's trade queens, but let's fix my pawn structure. And his position is so strong, and there's really no available move for Alekhine, that Alekhine has to go for the queen trade. But he does immediately get some counterplay with rook f5, attacking the weak pawn. After rook e1, this is a very interesting position. Obviously, these two connected passers are very, very strong, but they can't easily move right now. If you move the knight, then the e5 pawn falls. If you move the pawn, then the knight falls. So how do you improve this position? Well, it turns out we're never going to get that answer, because black should have played here king g8, and then white has to try to slowly improve the position. The things the computer is suggesting is stuff like pawn to b3, and it says that white has a clear advantage. And it certainly looks nice to be white, but white will have to progress very slowly. There's no clear plan to win the game, and I'm not sure if objectively white is winning, though one would definitely pick the white pieces. Alekhine though plays a different losing move, pawn to h6. I don't really understand why he selected this move. Obviously he must not have seen the next move, but h6 obviously seems worse than king g8 to me. The problem with pawn to h6 is that there is now a very pretty refutation. I encourage you to pause your video if you want to try to find it. Well, the right move is knight d8. There's always something pretty about sliding a knight into the opposite rank. And the point here is that now if you take on e5, which has been your whole idea to keep everything blocked in the middle of the board, then we're going to be able to arrange a fork on f7. That's why the king needed to go to g8 and not stay on h8. And of course white is simply winning. And now after rook d1, bishop to e5, we see queen e7, rook c8. The rook is headed into c2, targeting f2, and that's really going to be game over. Pawn to a5, rook to c2, king g2, knight d4 check, king f1. There are many ways to win at this point, but bishop f3, rook b1, and knight to c6. Now this hits the queen and the pawn on a5. Capturing the pawn on a5 would be enough, but probably the best idea for Smyslove next is bishop to d4, targeting the pawn on f2. After it falls, this will basically just be a mating attack that finishes the game. Therefore, Vladimir resigned after knight to c6. I hope that you...
b5. We have the first epic moment in the match. Fischer spends a little bit of time here, and he plays bishop takes h2. Now, if I ask you to pause here and say, what would you play here with the white pieces? You might not pause, you might pause, but of course you're going to play the move g3. And Boris Spassky just traps the bishop, because if you go to g1, like this, I bring in my king, and this bishop just has no escape, right? Now, there was some speculation after the move g3 that Fischer had calculated h5 coming in to help the dark-squared bishop here on h2. For example, king to e2, h4, trying to sacrifice the pawn in order to escape. But after king f3, maybe this. And so the king would have to come around from the other side to get the pawn, and the bishop would try to escape. And people speculated, like Garry Kasparov, that Fischer missed this idea. The fact that he actually will escape for a moment, but continue to be locked in. And ultimately, the game proceeded in this fashion. With king to e7, Fischer was forced to sacrifice his bishop, and a short while later, he ended up resigning the game. And with this, Boris Spassky took a 1-0 lead in the match. So, extra pawns. White has 5 pawns, black has 1. But black has a bishop. Extra bishop, right? I have 2 bishops, you only have 1. Now, it's a totally chaotic position. I mean, all the pieces are interacting, bam, bam. You know, we got the rooks here. You can't really take me, because I'm gonna take you with a check and hit your rook. You gotta hide in the corner, and I mean, you really want to get under the fire of my queen and my rook. They're angry. They want revenge for what you've been doing on the queen side. So at this moment, Garry plays the move rook takes pawn. It's a free pawn, and in the future, you kind of line up here. Also, that kicks out the defense of that knight. That knight has no guard anymore, and I'm threatening to infiltrate on the back rank. Karpov plays a very nice move here. He plays queen c4, and queen c4 lines up an attack on the king. So now, again, if you take, I got this. So what does Garry do? It's Garry's 39th move. He plays king to h8. It's a scary looking move, but you get out of the way, and even though you're walking into this, you're fine. here Karpov on move 40 plays the move e5. e5 shuts out this bishop and opens up these bishops to each other, and opening up this corner sniper to g2 would prove to be the fatal error. You feel free to pause here and find the knockout combination which made Garry Kasparov the world champion in 1985. I'll take a sip of my water, I'll give you a second. This is why you always look for checks. In this position, Garry has one check that is safe. Rook b1 check loses a rook. Queen b6 check loses a queen. But there's one check. Queen a7. And no one can get in the way. Anybody who gets in the way will be bulldozed by the queen. The only moves are here and here. And when that happens, I take you now with my bishop. Your king moves. And anywhere I move my knight is going to be check with my rook, a discovered check. All the while you are a move away from beating me. The whole time you could take. Because I'm threatening your king, you have to move. So Garry plays knight to d4 check. He could have played knight to e3 with double check, picking up the queen. Both would have been okay. He plays this, and he takes the rook. And in this position, Anatoly Karpov, the reigning world champion, resigned. Garry Kasparov won the match 13-11, and he was crowned the world champion at the time the youngest, 22 years of age.
That attempt for a counterplay. Rook g1 defends the g2 pawn, pawn to e3, pawn to d6, queen takes b7 is also good. Rook to g3, queen takes b7, and queen to e6. Now, in this position, I again want you to pause your video, try and figure out what Anand played. The right move makes Kasparov resign. The wrong move just about gives up a draw on the spot. So, let me give the wrong move first, because Anand said that he almost played this. Well, tell you what, let me give a very wrong move first. A very wrong move would be queen takes a8, which I'm assuming no one went for. That allows rook takes h3 check, pawn captures legally forced, and queen takes h3 is mate. Of course, Kasparov's not expecting Anand to fall for this. I mean, the threat is there, but he knows that Anand's not going to fall for this, and Anand, certainly spotted this threat, way before the threat even appeared on the board. However, there is a more subtle threat here. After rook f1, which Anand admits that he almost played here because it looks very natural to simply make some bluff for the king and to move the rook to a better square where it can be more active, Kasparov has a big trick. Rook to b8, decoying the white queen away from the long diagonal. Now, the queen can go to c6, as pointed out by Stockfish, and Stockfish says that white should still win in this position. But queen c6 is the only winning move, and of course, white has to dodge quite a few tricks to find queen c6 first, and there might still be some tricks to be dodged at this point. After rook b8, if the white queen accepts the rook sacrifice, then there's rook takes h3. It's pretty clear that accepting the rook on h3 is an immediate perpetual. The queen will simply check from these two squares as long as she wants to. But what's surprising is that king g1 also does not save the day. It seems like white has just won a whole rook. You just avoid capturing the rook on h3 and you're okay. But now queen e5, and white has no way to avoid the perpetual check. At this point, white pretty much has to accept the rook on h3, and black gets the perpetual with queen to g3 check. Pawn takes, check, and you can see the perpetual right here. After a few moves, we get 3-time repetition of the position and a draw. So, how did Anand force resignation and not fall for this trap here? In this position, he simply played the move king h2, and Kasparov resigned on the spot. It's move 35, and Kasparov didn't even try to play out the last 5 moves to get to move 40.